Ms. Carter, is that true?
Angela shook her head. No, someone tampered with the microphones. Michael's face hardened. Melissa, did you authorize equipment access? Melissa stuttered. I was just... But before she could finish, Mr. Collins, the elderly guest from earlier, stepped into the hall holding a USB drive. I have something the host needs to see, he said loudly. Michael took the USB and connected it to the large screen. The entire audience watched the lobby footage recorded earlier. Melissa insulting, Angela calling security trying to kick her out, and denying her reservation. Then the clip ended. The room was dead silent. Melissa's face drained of color. Michael turned toward her with fiery disappointment. Is this how you treat our invited speakers? Melissa tried to speak, but her voice shook. This isn't... Michael cut her off. Melissa Hart, you're suspended immediately. Security will escort you out. Gasps filled the hall. Melissa's world collapsed. She shouted at the guards, Don't touch me! My father owns this place. But the guards didn't stop. Edward Hart wasn't here to save her this time. Angela watched silently as Melissa was dragged out, her pride shattered, her career hanging by a thread. Once Melissa was gone, Michael turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's keynote speaker, Angela Carter. The audience erupted into applause. Angela stepped on stage, her voice steady, her presence powerful. She delivered a historic speech about racial discrimination in corporate culture, and the entire hall hung on every word. At the end, she said, Racism doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like a smile, a whisper, a rule twisted against you. But fighting it requires courage and unity. The crowd rose for a standing ovation. Back in the lobby, Melissa watched the live broadcast on a screen, rage and disbelief in her eyes. Her father entered the hotel angrily. Melissa, what have you done? But Melissa didn't answer. Her hatred had cost her everything. Angela finished her speech, lifted her chin with pride, and walked off stage knowing she had done more than just defend herself. She had made history fade to black. Grant's smile froze for a fraction of a second, long enough for fear to flicker. Then it vanished beneath charm. He whispered something to a man beside him. The man turned. His eyes widened. Adrian Cross wasn't supposed to be here. Grant excused himself politely from his circle and began moving across the floor. The music dulled. The room shifted without knowing why. He stopped directly in front of Adrian. Their eyes met. 5 years of silence stood between them. You have a lot of nerve showing up here, Grant said quietly. Adrian's voice was calm. So did you. When you signed my freedom away. Grant stiffened. That case was closed. Adrian leaned closer. Case is close on paper, not in memory. Grant scanned the room nervously. People were watching now. You should leave, Grant warned. Before you embarrass yourself. Adrian almost smiled. I didn't come here to embarrass myself. A pause. I came to remind you that the past doesn't stay buried forever. Grant's jaw tightened. For the first time that night, control slipped. Only slightly, but enough. Across the ballroom, a woman stood watching them both. Her name was Lena Moore, investigative journalist, feared by corporations, protected by truth. She had followed financial ghosts for years. Tonight she had finally found the living one. She quietly moved toward the security control area while everyone's attention remained on Grant and Adrian. Inside the control room, screens flickered with camera feeds from every angle of the building. Lena inserted a small flash drive into the main terminal. A progress bar appeared. Files began transferring. Encrypted files, hidden transactions, offshore accounts. Proof of everything. Back in the ballroom, Grant leaned in once more. You lost once, he whispered. You'll lose again. Adrian looked him in the eyes. I already lost, he said. That's why I'm dangerous now. At that exact moment, phones in the pockets of several journalists in the room buzzed simultaneously. A single notification. Confidential files uploaded. Grant's phone vibrated too. He glanced down, and the color drained from his face, because the collapse of his empire had already begun, and this night was far from over. The lights were still warm. The music still echoed softly through the crystal hall. The smiles were still painted on faces trained for luxury. But beneath all that beauty, something dark had already begun to move. Grant Holloway stood near the center of the ballroom, surrounded by people who only minutes ago had treated him like a king. Now, without any announcement, without any explosion, without any warning, that invisible crown began to melt. His phone vibrated once, then again, then again. He ignored it at first, forcing a laugh as someone cracked a nervous joke beside him. But when the fourth vibration came, stronger than the rest, his smile finally faltered. He glanced down, and in that single moment, his world shifted. Transaction logs, international wire transfers, shell companies, charity fraud, hidden accounts, encrypted ledgers, all released, all public, all real. His fingers trembled as he scrolled. The noise of the ballroom faded into a distant echo. His breath tightened. His heartbeat grew loud in his ears. Every wall he had built with money, fear, and control began cracking at once. Around him, subtle changes started to appear. A journalist's eyes widened. An investor slowly stepped backward. A board member whispered his name, not with pride, but with fear. The room realized something was wrong before it understood what it was. Adrian Cross stood quietly near the edge of the crowd. Hands relaxed, posture steady. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look angry. He looked finished. Grant raised his glass with forced confidence. His voice carried louder than it should have. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with brittle laughter, "it seems someone has decided to spread nonsense online tonight." A few polite chuckles failed to take hold. He continued, desperate now. "Fake documents are easy to create. Anyone with a laptop can—" "Grant Holloway." The voice cut through the room like a blade. Lena Moore stepped forward slowly, every camera finding her instinctively. Her eyes were locked on Grant with the calm of someone who had waited years for this exact second. "Federal sources have confirmed that every document released tonight is authentic," she said. "And not only that, they match active investigations that were buried before. Witnesses began disappearing." The room froze. Grant's face drained of color. "You're lying," he snapped. "You're chasing a headline." Lena lifted her phone. "Then why did the Department of Justice just unlock all sealed indictments connected to your name?" Grant opened his mouth. No sound came out. The massive doors at the far end of the ballroom opened with a slow, heavy force. The echo of armored footsteps rolled across marble like thunder. Dark uniforms, controlled movements, focused eyes. The letters on their jackets caught the chandelier light. FBI. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Glasses slipped from hands. A gasp rippled through the room. One of the agents stepped forward. "Grant Holloway," he said firmly, "you are under arrest for securities fraud, international money laundering, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and criminal conspiracy." The words didn't just land. They crushed. Grant staggered backward into a table. Champagne spilled. Guests pulled away from him as though he were suddenly contagious. "This is a setup," he shouted. "This is revenge! This is him!" He pointed violently at Adrian. "He planned this." Adrian took one slow step forward. "I planned survival," he said calmly. "You planned destruction." The agent seized Grant's arms. Cold metal cuffs snapped shut around his wrists. His wife screamed his name in panic. Board members shouted at lawyers on their phones. Guests surged toward exits, but security had already sealed the room. Phones lit up everywhere. Breaking news alerts flooded the world faster than Grant could breathe. He was pulled forward, stumbling as cameras outside exploded with light. As they dragged him past Adrian, his voice shattered into a whisper. "I made you," he said. "Everything you became." Adrian leaned in close enough for only him to hear. "You buried me alive," he replied softly, "and forgot that buried things don't always die." Grant was taken through the doors as screams, camera flashes, and sirens swallowed him whole. And just like that, the empire was gone,